Princess and the Pig. Our words are by Jonathan Emmett, and our pictures are by Polly Bernathan. Not that long ago, in a kingdom not far away from here, a farmer was traveling home from the market with a cartload of straw. The farmer was so poor that he didn't have a horse and had to pull his own cart. In the backyard, the cart lay in a tiny pink piglet. Nobody wanted to buy a piglet at the market, but the farmer had taken pity on it. "I'll call you Pigmella," he decided, as this seemed like a good name for a pig. Do you think Pigmella is a good name for the pig? It was a hot day, and the farmer stopped to rest in the shade of a great castle. Far from above him, on a high balcony, a queen was inspecting her new baby daughter. The queen was so rich that she had 7 nannies and didn't have to look after her own child. The queen picked the baby out of her cradle and held her at arm's length. "I'll call it Priscilla," she decided. "This seems like such a good name for a princess." A moment later, a wet, squeaking noise came from the baby's diaper, closely followed by an awful smell. "Yuck!" shrieked the queen, and dropped the baby, running off to find the royal nannies. Have you ever smelled a noise that made you want to yell, "Yuck"? She left so quickly that she didn't even notice she dropped the baby over the edge of the balcony. Can you make a connection to when you drop something very important? Maybe not quite a baby, but something important. Down, down, down went the baby, into the farmer's cart, up, up, up through the piglet, into the princess's cradle. When the queen returned and found the piglet lying where her baby should have been, she let out an even louder shriek and fainted into the nanny's arms. The king thought he knew what happened. A bad fairy had done this, he explained. The fairy wasn't invited to the princess's christening, so she turned the baby into a piglet to get her revenge. It's the sort of thing that happens all the time in books. Do you remember when we read the fairy tale about Sleeping Beauty and how the fairy had cast a bad spell on her? That's a connection I'm making to the fairy and the Pigmella. Meanwhile, the farmers had returned home and was just surprised to discover a baby girl laying where the piglet should have been. The farmer's wife thought she knew what had happened. A good fairy had done this, she explained. The fairy knew how poor and honest we were and how badly we wanted a child, so she turned the piglet into a baby. It's the sort of thing that happens all the time in books. Do you think that happens all the time in books? And so without a second thought, the baby became Pigmella, the farmer's daughter. The piglet became Priscilla, a royal princess. And the farmer and his wife soon forgot that she'd ever been a pig. Things were not so easy for Priscilla, but the king and queen never let anyone forget that she was really their princess. That's kind of like Cinderella, right? Making a connection to that. Nobody thought she could be a princess because she was dirty and old. As Pigmella grew older, she grew smarter and beautiful and was admired by everyone that she met. As Priscilla grew older, she grew not so smart and not so beautiful and was avoided by everyone she met. Then one day, the farmer's wife overheard some of the castle servants talking about the princesses who had turned her into a pig. "It's just like what happened to Pigmella," she told her husband, "only the other way around." The farmer soon guessed what had happened "The princess and the pig must have swapped places somehow," he exclaimed. "It's the sort of thing that happens all the time in books." The poor farmer and his wife were very unhappy. They loved Pigmella, but they knew they must return her to her rightful home. Pigmella was so unhappy. She loved the father and his wife so much and did not want to live with anyone else. But they were an honest family, so the next day they all went to the castle to see the king and queen. But they didn't believe it. "What nonsense!" cried the queen. "Ridiculous!" the king laughed. "This girl may be smart and beautiful, but she does not look or speak like a real princess." The queen thought she knew what was happening. "It's a trick," she declared. "This girl is just a farmer's daughter pretending to be a princess so that she can marry a prince. It's the sort of thing that happens all the time in books." What books do we think this happens in? And so Pigmella returned home with the farmer and his wife, where she married a young shepherd and lived happily ever after, and never once wished she'd been a princess. And Priscilla also got married to a handsome prince, although he had to be talked into it. Priscilla was changed into a pig by a bad fairy, the king exclaimed. "But once you kiss her, the spell will be broken, and she will turn back into a beautiful princess." "It's the sort of thing that happens all the time in books," they assured her. But unfortunately for the prince, it's not that sort of thing that happens in this particular book.